Hi everybody, let's take a look at problem 3-14a, which is a problem that deals with activity-based costing cost flows. Okay, we've got Rusty's company, and they use activity-based costing to determine product cost for external financial reports. At the beginning of the year, management made the following estimates of cost and activity in the company's 5 activity cost pools. So to the left of my mouse, you see the 5 activity cost pools. Then they provide the relevant activity measure, right? And they've estimated what the overhead costs were and the expected activities. Okay, then they ask us to compute the appropriate activity rate. So, trying to think if I should have a calculator offside to do this. Maybe what I'll do is I'll open up Excel. Give me a second here. Or maybe I'll just work it as we go. Okay, so to come up with the labor-related cost, what that would be is you'd have to come up with the overhead estimated cost. I'm going to type in this way, equals 18,000, as if I was doing this in Excel. And then you would divide it by the expected level of activity, which is 2,000 direct labor hours. Okay, and then you would hit enter. And if you did that using Excel, you would come up with $9 per hour. Okay, so I'm going to leave that there. Okay, now if we come up with the purchase order cost, by the way, I think I'll use 2 decimal places so that we've got it down. The purchase orders was 1,050, and we need to divide it by 525 orders. So if we jump over to Excel, we could put in 1,050, divide it by 525 orders, right? And I'll just say equal that cell divided by that cell, and we come up with $2. And I'll take it to 2 decimal places. So that then becomes $2. Okay, and you just use the same approach, right? Product testing 3,500 divided by 350 test, that'll come out to be $10. Template etching is 700 divided by 28. That comes out to be 25 per template. So the problem has been written so you get nice round numbers. And general factory is $5 per hour. Hopefully you see that. Okay, and that would be what you need to enter for problem 1. Requirement 1. Requirement 2 says during the year, actual overhead costs and activities were recorded as the follows. And we need to prepare the journal entries. Let me sort of get this. I want to try to line this up so you can see the data. I think that's about right. And still make the journal entry. Prepare a journal entry to record the incurrence of actual manufacturing overhead for the year and credit accounts payable, and post it to the company's T account. Okay, so we've got options of what we're going to debit for the various overhead costs, and hopefully you all understand these are overhead costs, so we would debit manufacturing overhead and we would debit for the full dollar amount that's given. What would we credit? We would credit accounts payable. Okay, and accounts payable would be credited for the same dollar amount, so the debits equal the credits, and they told us to use accounts payable. Then 2A says record the transaction in the given order, omit the $sign. Oh, now 2A is the T account, so that 83,000 debit shows up as a debit in the general ledger to manufacturing overhead, and that would be 2B. Now, determine the amount of overhead cost applied to production during the year. All right, now this gets a little bit trickier. All right, when we look back at our schedule, we know that we had a variety of activities used, and now we've got to use those rates we calculated here. So I think what I'm going to do is pause this and stage this in Excel and show you how I calculate it. Okay, so let's jump over to Excel. And what you see here on the screen now is the information we computed at the first part, right, where we came up with the activity rates. And then in, I think, section 1B, they gave us what the actual activity was. So if I just create a little table down here, then off to the side, I can come up with the applied overhead. Okay, and let me just expand this so that it looks right. And then we multiply across, right? The $9 times the actual activity. Bring this down. This now becomes dollars, right? I'll take it to whole dollars. We don't need cents. And then I can compute a total, right? A total at the bottom. And so I just sum from above. And I come up with 86,500 as the amount that would be applied. So now we jump back into our screen, and the overhead cost on 2B that I would use here would be that 86,150, the sum of what we just did. Okay, Part C says prepare a journal entry to record the application of overhead to work in process. Well, we know the dollar amount now. The dollar amount is the 86,150, right? And we would debit, if we're applying this to production, it would flow through to work in process, and the credit then would go to manufacturing overhead. Now, this is a bit of an oversimplification. Typically, all those overhead costs would go to manufacturing overhead, but they'd each have a unique account. You'd have a manufacturing overhead for each item. That way you could track the spending by each item. And typically, the account I've seen used here would be called manufacturing overhead applied. Okay, and it only gets the credit for the month, but it rolls into manufacturing overhead, so I understand why the problem presents us this way. It's a bit of a simplification, though, as opposed to how it's really done with general ledger systems in practice. All right, that takes care of section C on this one. D says determine the amount. Oh, wait, I've got one other. Oh, show the T account. So the manufacturing overhead had 83.7 here from before, and now on Part 2C we're crediting 86,150, right? So we're able to compute a balance of, I'm not sure if we're supposed to compute the balance, 2450, I think, if I do that math right. Yeah, it's 2450 would be a credit balance. We would subtract the 83 from the 86. Okay, and then on Part D it says determine the amount of underapplied or applied overhead manufacturing for the year. And you know, we've done that. That's the 2450. So because the credits exceed the debits, then that means we're over-applied for the year. If we were under-applied, the actual cost would exceed what we applied. So we're over-applied 2450. And that takes care of Part D. All right, now let's look at the next part, which is Requirement 3. And Requirement 3 says the actual activity for the year was distributed among the company's 4 products below. Determine the total amount of overhead cost applied to each product. Okay, now I need to slide this down. And we again have to go back to what the activity rate was, and then we have to do a multiplication times the actual activity rate to come up with the applied overhead. Hang on here. Alright, so let me talk through how you would do it for Product A. Product A, you would take the 500 direct labor hours used times that $9 rate we previously calculated. Then you would take the 320 orders times the $2 purchase order rate that we previously calculated. And if you remember, we calculated that up here, right here. So we have 9, 2, 10, 25, and 5. So if I slide on down, what you would get in these various answers is 500 times 9, which is 4,500, right? The next one was $2, so 320. Oh, by the way, that's only for one part. That's only part of the answer. Then you need to also consider the 320 times $2, add that to it. Then add 200 times whatever the appropriate rate was for product testing, which I think was $10. The template etching came out at $25 per template, but there's no cost there for product A. And general factory came out for $3,400. Okay, now rather than work this, because that will take a whole lot of time and make this demo even longer, I'm going to illustrate how you would do it for product A, and from there I'll leave it up to you to take it to figure out B, C, and D. Hang on now. Okay, now you're looking at Excel again, and this is the solution for product A that I just walked you through. We have the $9 rate that we calculated earlier times 500 direct labor hours, which they've given us, right? They told us how much of the various activities was used by product A. So we multiply across for each one of these, then sum, and 24,140 is what needs to go under A. So in here we would drop in 24,140. And you use the same approach to figure out B, C, and D. So if that went quickly, stop the presentation and look back and see how I came up with it. And that is a brief demonstration of how you would tackle this particular type of problem. Thanks, everyone.